Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about Episode 8 of Season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars called A Necessary Bond. Overall, I think this was an alright episode. Last episode in my review, I expressed some concerns about whether or not we'd be able to take Hondo seriously as a character after this episode if he got outwitted by a bunch of little meddling Jedi kids. And, well, I still have some mixed feelings in that regard, but we'll get up to all of that in a minute. Let's just jump right into some of the things that I did notice about this episode. The first thing that comes to my mind is the scene where the kids are building their lightsabers together, and you got this really nice scene of them all kind of concentrating and putting their lightsabers together, with one exception. And this actually reminds me a lot of what is called Jedi battle meditation. This is a very powerful force ability where Jedi can sort of bond minds together, even not just among themselves, but with the troops they're leading. And it can be an enormous asset in times of war. Now, just exactly how rare this ability is well, this ability originated in the original Knights of the Old Republic game, and it was portrayed as being a huge deal, something extraordinarily rare. I believe it was established that years before this that the Sith Lord Naga Sadow had this ability, and using it, the Sith armies had almost destroyed the Republic. And now there was a Jedi who had this ability, and it was their big ace in the hole against the Sith. Blah 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 blah. I don't want to bash you over the head with too much lore, and honestly, if you've not played the original Knights of the Old Republic or its extremely good sequel, they're older games, but definitely very much worth a shot, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. But anyway, now exactly how rare this ability has somewhat fluctuated over the years, as best I understand it. Initially, it was portrayed as being hyper rare. They sort of eased off on that, I think, a little bit over the years. Now, I'm not saying that this is what was going on here. We have seen that Jedi do have these abilities to sort of establish emotional bonds and connections to each other through the Force, and not necessarily just the sort of things where a Padawan will sense that their master has died or something like this. Jedi can generally do this amongst themselves at times if they want to, for various purposes. Now, I don't think this is something that the younglings may have been deliberately doing. On the other hand, it might be. This is something that they probably would have trained them to do. I could see this, learning to sort of fall into the Force as a group being part of youngling training. So this basically being a Force power or a Force ability or something like that, I don't think I can. I think we'd have to get like an official ruling from the creators on this one. I'm just saying this is what came to my mind while I was watching this episode. As I said, I would not say that it's probably full on battle meditation because, of course, they're not in battle. But that's the first thing that popped into my mind, so I just thought I'd bring that up with you guys. Now, another thing that I noticed was that they refer to Hugh Yang as Master. Now, in the previous episode, which one episode apparently is all they had the budget for to keep David Tennant around, he was simply referred to as Professor. Here, the younglings have taken to referring to him as Master, despite the fact that he's not a Jedi Master. So this tells me that this is really more of, one, it's not really a formal thing. He is not officially in any way, shape, or form a Jedi Master. A droid cannot be a Jedi Master. This is really just their way of showing Hugh Yang extreme respect. After the events of last episode, it's pretty easy to believe that the younglings would have garnered a great deal of respect for him, droid or not. So I do think that was a nice touch, a very subtle thing, something you might not have caught if you weren't paying attention or really just thinking about what was going on. Another thing that I enjoyed this episode was Hondo referring back to the episode from a couple of seasons back where he took Count Dooku prisoner, and of course it was made quite clear in that episode that if he'd allowed Dooku to contact the Separatists and they'd have just killed Hondo and his pirates and obviously not paid him for his efforts. So I do like the fact that they were acknowledging that. It's always nice when these shows really kind of dig back and refer to previous episodes and not just stuff that happened an episode or two ago, but really in the deeper past of the series. And, I especially, of course, like it when they refer to events from outside the show and the expanded Star Wars universe. And, of course, given how much of my time in these reviews is spent discussing those things, I think that's kind of obvious. Speaking of which, we see that Obi-Wan Kenobi loses his ship this episode. I swung by Wikipedia to see if I could get some confirmation on this, but I'm wondering if that wasn't the Negotiator, which is the flagship of basically Obi-Wan Kenobi's flagship. That is the ship he spends most of his time as serving on when he's out on the Republic capital ships during the war. Now, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not really 100% sure. It's certainly not the only ship in the Republic Navy. It's certainly not the only Republic Navy major cruiser that he's been on. So, cruiser, Star Destroyer, you get it. I'm sure that that'll eventually get spelled out for sure as time goes by. But again, that's just a question that crossed my mind, so I thought I'd present that to you. Now, getting on to my main gripe with this episode. Now, I do like that they give the younglings a perfectly justifiable reason for landing on that planet. Of course, we can't stay in space. If we do, we're gonna die. So, okay, fine. It's good that they landed on the planet. It's good that they immediately contacted the Jedi to let them know what was going on. We only had Petro, who was really gung-ho on the idea of going and trying to save Ahsoka themselves. And, the younglings were displaying a pretty impressive amount of maturity here. They were being reasonable. They were acting the way that younglings raised among the Jedi should. Now, granted, Gunji and Biff were kind of on Petro's side once it was clear that they were going to have to land on that planet, but I can kind of grant them that. We do have to, at the end of the day, remember that these are still very young kids, and who are probably a little overconfident in their abilities. But we'll get to that. Now, actually, though, I was a little weirded out when Obi-Wan said, the younglings are on their own. Well, look, a Jedi Padawan has been captured. There's a group of younglings in danger, and an ancient droid with extreme value to the Order, as well as a ship with extreme value to the Order, are in serious danger. I'm pretty sure Obi-Wan can get on the comm and call the Jedi and say, "Hey, can somebody go get those guys?" I know it's a war and the Jedi are stretched extremely thin, but this seems like a serious enough situation to, send someone else. It's like I'm sure the Jedi can find somebody else who can go and deal with this. Yeah. Now, let's get into my main gripe of this episode. And this is just the incredibly ridiculous coincidence of the younglings stumbling upon the traveling circus. Now, sometimes in fiction, you just sort of have to throw your characters a bone. Sometimes you have to cut them a break. But this just seems like a little too much. Seriously, it's some very big-time Deus Ex Machina. And I suppose there's some people out there who might say, well, this was the will of the Force, or blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's such a thing as the will of the Force, and then this is something that the writers threw out there because this had to happen for the story to wrap up. Okay, I could really go on a rant about this sort of thing, but at the end of the day, we do have to keep in mind that this is a show that's aimed at kids. This is aimed at elementary school age kids. So, while there's obviously a lot of elements to the show that are designed to appeal to adults and older Star Wars fans in general, teenagers and whatnot, at the end of the day, we do have to keep in mind this is a kids show, and sometimes on kids shows, you just have to let the Deus Ex Machina slide and just roll with it. So as much as I'm irritated by that, I'm not going to harp on it too awful much. And to be completely fair, there is quite a lot of things to be said for the little space circus that we get. We see quite the cavalcade of Star Wars aliens. We see Dugs and Togruta and Twi'leks. A Gamoran as a clown. That's certainly unusual. And we even see the several members of the Alina species. Those are the little blue fellas that are running around all over the place. Not the Ringmaster, but the other tiny little guys. And we've seen the Alina in Clone Wars before. We've seen them in the comics. And there was even an Alina Jedi Master as an opponent in the first Star Wars The Force Unleashed game. So, again, really nice use of the greater Star Wars lore. I always get a kick out of them using species that are, not the standard ones we've seen 100 times before. Now, I will give the younglings credit. Deus Ex Machina or not, they do come up with a pretty reasonable and pretty clever plan. This is some very Spy Kids kind of stuff, but again, at the end of the day, this is a kids show. It's as reasonably well written as you could really ask for, given the main overall story that we're dealing with here. And I do like the fact that the writers do also kind of make it a point that to show us quite clearly Hondo's drunk off his butt in this episode. And that goes a long way towards making it plausible that the kids could get away with this. And just to bring up one other thing that crossed my mind while I was watching this episode, was that a male member of Hondo's crew that was sitting on his lap with his arm around Hondo's neck? Okay, we're not going to get into it any further than that, but that character most definitely did not look female to me. But then again, I don't think we've ever seen a female Weequay. That's a Hondo species, if you're not familiar with it, anywhere in the Star Wars universe that I'm aware of. So, yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. We don't want to get into a big argument about that sort of thing here. That's not what we do. And I do like that at the very end, Ahsoka said, I could pretend to be mad at you guys for what you did, but, realistically, you did a good job. And you know what? That's exactly the sort of reaction she should have had. It rings true to Ahsoka as a character, and it feels emotionally in terms of storytelling wise very satisfying. Yes, the kids did go against the rules. I mean, but she does say, it's like my master says, sometimes you have to bend the rules to, do what's necessary. So, overall, I think that while it does have some uneven stuff, there's some very blatant Deus Ex Machina going on, and they had to basically make the villain drunk in order to make what happened seem more plausible. But for the most part, I still had fun watching this episode. The acrobatics, the CGI was really good. The battle sequences, especially the space battle sequences, were really great stuff. We got to see Obi-Wan and General Grievous mix it up again. Albeit the only real major thing that come out of that was the spaceship got destroyed. So that sort of felt like padding to me, I suppose. But still, even though this wasn't the strongest episode, it was still, for its flaws, a pretty entertaining one. I've considered it 22 minutes well spent. And really, I don't think you can ask for too awful much more than that. So folks, with that said, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter @HoosierJedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.